Welcome, everyone. My name is Allison Maxon. I am with ScreenBeam. We are delighted to have you join us for our webinar with Howard and ScreenBeam. Our two presenters, Shayna Neely and David Lopez, are looking forward to speaking with you more. We're just going to give a few minutes for everyone to log into the webcast, and we'll be starting here in just a few minutes. Thank you so much. All right, I think we are ready to start. Shayna, great, you're not on mute. That's the biggest question of the day or of the century at this state of situation that we are in. Again, thank you everyone for joining us for our webinar. I am going to hand it over to Shayna Neely from Howard. Shayna?
Thank you, Allison. It's nice to see you guys today or hear you guys. Thank you for joining us. Again, my name is Shannon Neely. I'm with Howard Technology Solutions, and it's so great to be here with you this morning. Today's webinar will focus on designing a modern-day classroom. Today, we're going to hear from ScreenBeam, where we'll learn about award-winning solutions that help transform meeting spaces and classrooms with app-free and contactless wireless presentation solutions. To kick things off, I'd first like to take a moment to tell you a little about Howard. Okay, so to many of you who are new to Howard, Howard Industries is probably one of the largest companies you've never heard of before. Howard Technology Solutions is actually one of 4 divisions of Howard Industries, our parent company. So Howard Industries is made of 4 different companies, including Howard Transformers, Howard Transportation, Howard Lighting, and Howard Technology Solutions. The picture of the building here on the screen is our corporate office, and that's located in Ellisville, Mississippi. So at the surface, Howard Technology Solutions is a value-added reseller. However, we're also a large integrator and a technology manufacturer. As a matter of fact, there is very little that we couldn't provide to your institution or organization as it even remotely relates to technology. Howard has over 2 million square feet of manufacturing space where we manufacture a variety of solutions, including computers, laptops, servers, gaming devices, kiosk, point of care carts, and medical carts. The one area that differentiates Howard from our competition is our support. So along with our inside and outside sales team members, which are assigned to each account or each client, we have a team of over 500 engineers on staff, including pre-sales engineers, design engineers, and project managers. And they're all on staff to ensure that we're there to guide each of our customers every step of the way. Okay, so thank you for your lending ear to hear a little about Howard. So now I'd like to introduce David Lopez with ScreenBeam. Welcome, David.
David, I think you're on mute. There you go, David. How's that?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry about that technical
That's
difficulty
okay.
there.
All right, do you guys see my screen, Allison?
Yep, your screen is there. You are good to go.
Okay, great. Just gonna get a few of these little windows out of the way. There we go. Good afternoon or good morning, wherever you are. My name is David Lopez. I'm with ScreenBeam. I am the Strategic Alliance Manager for North America, Senior Alliance Manager for North America for Education. I'm excited to be with you today, excited to be able to talk to you about some things in our title. If I go back to that, designing a contactless classroom in a post-COVID world. And we're going to talk more about that in just a little bit, and I'll give you an agenda. A little bit about my background. I come from the classroom as a teacher. I worked in a K through 12 environment for several years as both a teacher and at the district level, and then went to work after that with Microsoft and the education side, and kind of working through with different schools around the country, and even some global opportunities in training and working with teachers. And with ScreenBeam, I've really been excited to work with ScreenBeam now for almost 8 years, and really kind of heading up our education program and our messaging that we do, and some of the things that we talk about, and how we position, how we're positioned in schools and classrooms throughout the world. And I'm excited about being able to talk to you guys today, mainly because we're working with a great partner like Howard. As Shanna said, there's a myriad of things that Howard does that really fit well, obviously, in the ScreenBeam side of things, and we're excited about continuing our work with them as a strategic partner. Our agenda today, what we're going to cover is obviously we've been through some introductions. We're going to set the stage for the presentation overall. We're going to talk about returning to learn. We're going to talk about the idea of proactive planning, and then classroom design challenges, and then look at what those solutions are. And if we have time, I think we should be able to have plenty of time to get into a live demo. So this won't be me just presenting a PowerPoint to you guys. We'll actually do some live demonstrations of ScreenBeam in real time, so you can see some of the benefits that we talk about that I'll talk about in this presentation today. So first, I want to get into where we are right now, kind of setting the stage and looking at where we are right now with education. We're seeing a ton of statistics coming out since the past year, and looking at where we are with where we've been with hybrid learning, where that has affected schools, how that's changing. We're going to look at that in just a little bit. But we're also seeing slower paces of learning right now because of some of that online learning that we're doing right now. We're also seeing less content being covered right now because, again, in those hybrid environments in the last year and online only, sometimes it's just harder to cover content. I've taught online classes, I've designed online courses, and I've also been part of an online course as well. So all 3 levels, and understanding that there's just a different way of learning when you're doing things online. One of the things that's showing in that environment, especially with students in K through, you get the K through 5, the elementary, and some middle, and then high school as well, you're seeing less engagement of students that are online, and that's a problem for a lot of schools. And then again, that narrowing the achievement gap, which districts around the country and around the world, but specifically folks here in the United States, have been focused on doing, has been a problem, right? If you're trying to narrow that achievement gap, and then all of a sudden, you know, all these things hit, and you're trying to figure out how do we get back. how do we make that work again and get back to where we were pre-COVID? There's issues that we've had. The other thing you're seeing was less assignment completion in online stuff. And so if you're seeing that and you're seeing that in your schools, that's part of the reason is just the nature of the environment that we're in, where we are right now. We also are seeing, unfortunately, in those areas where there's socioeconomic backgrounds, lower socioeconomic differences, we're seeing that inequality, that achievement gap that we've been trying to narrow even get wider. And so we really are in a tough place right now as teachers trying to teach in some of these environments where there's hybrid learning, but a lot of schools are starting to come back. And so we're trying to figure out, okay, let's look forward, right? And that's where we are. I signed that, I think, in an email that I said the other day. I'm looking forward to looking forward. And that's really where we are right now. If we look at some statistics, though, there's a great resource that yours free of charge. If you haven't seen this already, it's called returntolearntracker.net. A great website, which I've got previewed here, and I'm going to skip up to my machine here so you can take a look. This is a great set of statistics, and it's actually changed almost on a regular basis, where you're seeing a lot of added statistics being put in here, so a lot of different variables. This one right here, though, is interesting to me because I've actually been watching this over the last month, maybe month and a half or so, and seeing how this has changed. And you can even go back and I think look at some of these on a historic level, and you notice that button historic. But just several weeks ago, this number here of all districts fully in person was at something around 37%, actually 39, I think it was at 39% just in the last month and a half or two. And so we're starting to see this number of fully in person start to really significantly increase. And that's something that's not new to most of you probably on the call. You're starting to see that maybe in your own areas. But this is a great website to kind of take a look at where everybody else is, how things are delineated, what it's looking like across the country in students and schools that are returning to school or they're still in a hybrid or fully remote models. You can see here in this chart that fully remote model was significant, and even as far back as just looking at December of last year and how that has changed all the way to current predictions and where current information on where things are. This last chart is really easy to look at as well. It's kind of a state map and where states are as states are returning, what areas of the country are a little bit different than others, and how things are shifting. And you can even drill down into individual states and see the instructional status of those areas. So really, again, that's kind of a look at where we are right now. That return to learn is a big factor that a lot of schools are now talking about right now. What do we do? How do we spend the money? How do we budget for different environments? But what has happened and what we're seeing is a lot of proactive planning going on right now. Whereas in 2020, when COVID hit, it was a lot of reactive planning. You're just buying devices because you needed to buy them. You're buying, a couple of years worth of technology in about 2 months, and everything's kind of really reactive. And now as we're moving forward, we're in that proactive planning stage. So what do we do though? How do we be proactive? We hit the unknown in 2020 and everything kind of flew out the window. So now we're trying to say, okay, how do we then prepare for that return? What do we do to make it easier for teachers to come back, for students to come back? And what do we do? So schools are now planning for one-to-one plan for students. Some schools are ditching that altogether and say, we're not going to do one-to-one. We're going to try and be more careful about that. But in the past, one-to-one programs were very, very strategically planned out. How are we going to do this? What are we going to do? How are we going to roll these things out? And all of a sudden, some schools are dealing with, okay, we're doing one-to-one. All these students are coming back with devices. How do we plan for that? Teachers needing access to the right solutions for a contactless environment, right? We want to protect our teachers. We want to give them a safe space that they feel like they can work in. How do we create a contactless environment or a less contact environment for them to work in? Learning is taking place in redesigned spaces as classrooms are coming back, trying to figure out how to redesign those spaces. How do we come up with something that's scalable and simple with long-term uses in mind, right? We don't want to buy stuff now and use stuff now in an instructional technology point of view that's not going to be used long term. Could you possibly do that? Yes, you can buy stuff and just say, okay, let's just throw all this stuff in there, but maybe on a long-term usage, it may not be as necessary if you really look forward to 2 or 3 or 4 years ahead. So we want something that's scalable and simple. The other thing that we're having to deal with is, as school districts are coming back, is teacher retention. One of the things that we talk about is that your environment that you're bringing teachers back in should help bolster teacher retention. And there's a huge reason why. If you look at the numbers, if your district hasn't already seen these numbers, you're probably starting to feel some of that impact. That K through 12 employment is more than 500,000 jobs below its year-ago levels and 890,000 jobs below where it would have to be to keep up with growth in student enrollment since 2008. Half of those 890,000 K through 12 employees are teachers, right? And so if you look at this chart, this is from the Economic Policy Institute. If you look at the end of the chart here, you'll notice this looks like the end of the chart, but this is actually the drop off, right? It looks like, oh, this is the other axis of the chart. No, that's the drop off and how severe of a drop there was, and it's still lower, way too low to where it needs to be. So that idea of public education employment, how do I create an environment that I'm bringing teachers back in? I'm being competitive with the district next door. I'm making sure that I am keeping up to date with what my classrooms are like, what my devices are like in the room, how my teachers and students interact in that classroom, that I'm on the cutting edge of doing that. But I'm also trying to keep in line with the budget and the money that I'm trying to spend wisely, because some of the money that I have now may not be there in next year. So how do I make sure that I can create a sustainable solution? And so that's really where you look then at, what does classroom design come into this? How does these classroom design challenges that I'm seeing now, or that maybe I'm having to look at in order to be proactive, how does that come into play here? Well, here's all the challenges that you're facing, or that a lot of districts are facing. You have increasingly complex IT environments due to the number of new devices connecting to the network. You have a struggle to provide access and equity and engagement for students, and that's something that we see especially in those hybrid environments where you're having students that are still remote and you're trying to create that right environment for them. So how do I provide that equity and access for them? I've got pressure on the costs to make sure that that is a scalable solution, that I can bring the services to the institutions that I work for faster, and try to reduce those costs, because again, I need to plan for the long term, not just what money I have now and that's in my pocket. I need to figure out, how am I going to do this on a long-term basis? I also think about my teams and my individuals. They need a flexible and a secure option that's just going to work in my rooms that I'm planning out in my classrooms. I also have pressure to adopt and integrate and engage with new technology, right? So I can't just stay stagnant to go back to 2019 usage of technology. I need to have that idea of keeping up with everybody else as well. So I need to be able to have that as a goal, and that is a challenge when I'm designing my classrooms, when I'm designing what the classroom looks like, and how I'm setting out a plan, not just giving schools, yes, we can give schools check, say, okay, you go ahead and buy what you want. But if you're a director of IT, if you're a superintendent, if you're trying to influence those decisions, let's look at solutions that can be used on a wide scale, that we can recommend, that says this works, and then let's build off of that. The other pressure that you have now is integrating health and safety concepts where they might not have been thought of before. And that's another challenge that you're trying to face as districts right now. A lot of districts that we work with are trying to face. So you get into this idea of complex and challenging, right? And you're trying to move all of that complexity to something that is simple and super. How do you do that? And when you look at a lot of classroom designs, when you look at what you expect to have in a lot of classroom when you walk in, or what you see, and what I see when I walk into a lot of classrooms, is a complex and challenging solution. Of the one on the left there is complex. I've got multiple devices, I've got lots of cables running everywhere, I've got all sorts of things that I'm trying to connect and make work. Then I've got the teacher that's stuck and connected to those devices because of all the cables and wiring. And I'm trying to move to something that's simple and super. And that's where ScreenBeam and Howard are working together to build these kinds of solutions that says, let's get rid of that complexity and let's start with a scalable and simple solution and figure out how we build on that from there. And this next slide really kind of lays out at its bare bones what this could look like. And now this is just a simple solution you see here with ScreenBeam here connected to a big screen, and then you have a teacher device here. Could be a Windows device, could be Mac OS, could be Chrome, could be Android, could be a iOS device. But as simple as it looks is as simple as it is. I can walk in with a device as a teacher when I have a ScreenBeam, and you'll see it in just a minute, and I have that connected. And now if I've given my teachers a mobile solution, a mobile device that allows them to walk around the room, that allows them to have that freedom in the classroom and not stuck in one place, now with that wireless solution in place, I can have a simple, easy, scalable setup that doesn't require cabling and wires and cords and all the things that you would expect to see in a classroom. And if I start with this, it helps me make better decisions. Well, what does that look like when I look at an overall, if I go back to those problems that I'm trying to solve, those design challenges? Well, you have fewer components to manage at an overall lower cost. So if I'm setting up and I'm starting and just trying to clean everything up and saying, how do we get to the right place and start off in with the right footsteps, I can replace a ton of components if I'm just using a really powerful teaching device and a ScreenBeam. So maybe I have a device that has a camera and a pen and multiple cameras, maybe on the front and on the back, and it has a keyboard, and it's a tablet or any sort of tablet device that I can use. And so now I can replace a lot of those other things that are in there. But what I'm doing is not necessarily getting rid of technology, is that I'm allowing my focus then, additional benefits out of this is I'm allowing my focus to become not on the, sorry, I'm having to get rid of my, my little window here so I can see the rest of my slide. I'm not having to focus on, I can focus my training on my teachers, on what they have in their hands that they're always going to have with them. So whether they're carrying a laptop, a clamshell device they're taking home with them, or they're taking a Mac OS or an iOS or a Windows device, they have that. I can focus that training on what's on that device because they're going to walk into any room and be able to connect without touching anything. And that untethers their experience, gives them an untethered experience rather than having to walk into a room, plug in a device, and be stuck in one place in the classroom. So you're no switching between multiple devices. You can get with ScreenBeam and Windows, we're going to talk about this just a little bit, you get wireless touch and inking. So if you have touch screens in the room, you can have that wireless touch and inking still. And you get to have a flexible classroom layout. But the bottom line is this is a solution that you can build off of, as opposed to trying to say, okay, well, let's start with putting a really expensive screen on the wall that has a lot of software, maybe another computer in it, and then let's add other components to that. And then maybe in the end of that, I'll end up with a teacher that is flexible and has an agile teaching environment and has a powerful teaching device. Oh, but I've spent all the money on the classroom technology and I can't give my teachers a wireless display because I've spent all the money that I had on just getting what I thought was the right solution set up. But if you start with something simple and you give them that immediate leap forward into a modern classroom, which if you would all agree with me, I think you would, that a modern classroom does not require a teacher to go in and start plugging in things to make it work. A modern classroom is something that is completely wireless and that allows the teacher to have an agile access to all of the classroom, all of the students that they need to be able to have. And so when you start with this, it helps you make better decisions and be able to build off of that in the classroom. We have all sorts of resources that you can look at this discussion. And we've had this discussion. And the funny thing is, I'm going to go back to this slide here. These pictures that you see on this slide, these are 2 or 3 years old. We've been talking about this and doing this for way longer than any of the COVID way before COVID, and understanding that it needs to be a simpler solution to setting up your classrooms and a solution that you can build on. And we've got all sorts of resources that you can take a look at screenbeam.com. Obviously, our partnership with Howard allows us to put some of those on their website as well. But the true cost of the modern classroom, the reverse engineering the modern classroom, and looking at what that really looks like. And you can dive into some of those if you want to talk to us afterwards about looking deeper into some of that content. But really, let's get into the product itself, right? So this is where, you know, you've seen pictures of this in some of the slides that I've had, but this is our ScreenBeam 1000. This is what we're saying, and with good reference, right? What we're saying could be the establishment of a modern classroom design in a post-COVID world, and obviously a pre-COVID world as well, because we used this all before COVID. But the idea of using this device as the baseline for that, because it allows you to present from any laptop, tablet, smartphone, anything wirelessly. It's all native connections, so there's no mirroring, no apps or dongles that you need to be able to use. It allows you to have true extended desktop mode. It acts like it's a cable, right? So the computer, as far as it's concerned, on the Mac OS and on the Windows side, it thinks that it's a cable. So you can do things like extended screen mode. We have things like quick switch mode enabled. We have the ability to offer you multiple ways to connect to the ScreenBeam, either over your network or in more of a point-to-point solution, so that it's not affecting the network traffic. We have native touch built in, so wireless touch and inking with Windows 10. We also have a digital signage player built in. We just announced a partnership with Carousel Digital Signage, where you can integrate that into the ScreenBeam. We have the ability to connect up to 4 screens at one time with the ScreenBeam, but we also have something called Classroom Commander, which we'll talk about, that comes with ScreenBeam, that you can connect up to 50 student devices and 1 teacher at one time to have an orchestration solution. Our Multiview Mode, as I just mentioned, you can share up to 4 Windows 10 displays, and actually just expanded that last month to up to 4 of any operating system. So I could be showing a Windows device, an iPad, a Chrome device, and a Mac OS device all at one time on a single device, again, without any apps installed. And so this is our flagship education device that we're putting into classrooms right now. And then you have our ScreenBeam 1100 Plus, which is more of our hybrid and contactless meeting spaces and unified communication solution. So if we have time, we'll talk more about that, but this is what you might see in a principal's office, in a boardroom, in a conference room, in training rooms at your schools where you have a lot of guests come into training. I used to work at Hillsborough County Schools, so we had our instructional service center where we had tons of training rooms, and you have guests coming in all the time to be able to present and connect. That's where the ScreenBeam 1100 Plus really fits into district offices, things like that. And again, we can talk more about the differences on why that's really important. And hopefully I'll have time to talk about a really big announcement that we have coming up in the next in the next week or so, just in a little bit here, about ScreenBeam 1100 Plus and unified communications. So that's our flagship device, right? So, and then we get into Classroom Commander. I'll show some more content about this, but the ability to preview student screens before they share, to be able to monitor students in real time, to be able to, again, create that untethered environment. And I will tell you that everything that we've taught, well, let me get through one slide. We'll talk about Classroom Commander in just a little bit more. But in addition to that, the Classroom Commander, we've also got a central management system built into the ScreenBeams that you can use when you deploy these. So you're not worried about, again, that idea of being scalable, the idea of being cost effective, the ability to be able to deploy devices and then manage them without any additional cost is important. And that's where our CMS Enterprise comes in. And everything that I've mentioned up to this point is all included in one price that you pay one time. So it's not as if we're going to say, okay, well, if you want to add this feature, it's going to be $10 per device, or you want to add this feature, it's going to be another $10 per device per year. We're not doing that. Our model is that we allow you to make a purchase and use our devices, and we support them. And as Howard said, our support in addition to that, one of the reasons why, again, we love Howard and our partners is that they provide support, but we also support our devices, and we have the best in class white glove support for ScreenBeam, and for any wireless display solution out there. ScreenBeam is #1 in support. So I'm going to skip out of this, and I'm going to escape and stop presenting my screen here. Let me see. I apologize. I am not a big GoToWebinar user. Allison, can you stop me from sharing my screen?
Certainly, no problem.
I'm not seeing it. Oh, there it is. It was gone. I found it. Okay.
There you go.
So now I would like to share my camera. And Allison, is there a way to spotlight my camera so that it's a better view for everyone? Or maybe Shanna, if you stop sharing your camera, it might open up the screen for mine.
Actually, you are good now.
I'm full screen? Okay, good.
Yes, you're full screen.
Okay, so what I'm going to show you is a demonstration of how easy it is when it comes to using ScreenBeam in the classroom. So if I set up, now you notice I've got a big touch screen here behind me. I've got the ScreenBeam connected here on the bottom, and that's all the cabling and wiring that I've got connected. So literally it's about putting a screen on the wall or putting a projector in the ceiling, putting a ScreenBeam next to it, and you're done. That's really all the setup you need. Now, we can get into other things like management, and we can either do wired management or wireless management, and we talk about some other solutions like the UC stuff, but at its heart, it really is, I could walk into any one of your schools today, plug in the ScreenBeam, and I can do what I'm about to do without any other setup. So I can go in here. In Windows case, I can click Windows K, or I can go into the Connect menu and click Connect, and I can find my device. So you can see that it says ScreenBeam app free there on the top. Let me close this screen here. And once I click connect, I could enter a PIN, but you see how quickly and easily I jumped in there, and now I'm connected. So now I have my screen connected, and you can see everything is showing up here on my screen in real time. So if I were to open up my pen and start writing here, I don't have the inking turned on. Let me turn off the active pen here. So now I can start writing on this content here, and everything is showing up in real time on my screen. But the other thing that I talked to you about is the ability to have the touchback support, so that I can still have touch activated. And notice there's no apps involved in this at all. This is in Whiteboard, but now I can come in, I can open up I've got a pen here. Let's see if I can grab my other pen here. So I've got a pen here, and you'll notice if you take a look at this screen as I'm writing, everything that I'm doing here is showing up on this screen here as well, and even the gestures that I do. So if I want to do gestures with this, it's all allowing me to do that, and it's completely wireless. So all it took was me to include that USB cable, plug it into the ScreenBeam, and now I have full inking and touch capabilities. But one of the things that you may not notice this up close, but we've actually invented a technology called ghost inking, and if you've ever used wireless touch before, it's laggy. And it takes a moment for when I'm writing for the actual ink just to follow my pen, because there's a lag in the connection. We've actually pioneered something called, I'm sorry, my microphone's, something called ghost inking that eliminates that lag almost 100%, and nobody else is doing that. So it's really easy for me to take notes and to write content and not be guessing that I'm actually writing. And so that's a huge piece when you're trying to integrate that technology that you've already got and making sure that it's a seamless connection. So with ScreenBeam, again, nobody else is doing that, allows you to make that work. The other thing I talk about, and I talk to you about making the device work for you and getting the most out of your devices. Being able to do something as simple as turn on the camera is really important, right? And turn on the camera and be able to use that as now a wireless document camera, right? So now I've got in my hands, because I've set up my classroom design with a very simple but super solution. If I give my teachers a device that allows me to have a camera on both sides of my device, maybe I've got a wireless webcam. Now I've got a wireless document camera that I can walk up, I can take a picture of content, and then I can immediately, oops, I was in recording mode. So I can take a picture of content, jump into that photo, and then now I can actually interact with that photo. So if I want to go in and write on that content, if I want to open that up and start editing that and draw on that content, so now I've got, you know, a wireless document camera that I just put in my teacher's hands, right? And so I didn't have to do a lot of training to make that work. All I did was open up my camera. And that's what teachers know how to do. That's easy for them to do. And so again, I talked about that idea of focusing your training on the things that you need to focus on. All you're doing is allowing your teacher to get the most out of their devices that they already have by opening up this environment. And that's something simple, but it's super. I do a whole talk called Making the Simple Super, and it's about utilizing the technology in your classroom in the right way. So that was one connection, right, that I did. And you can see how fast and how easy that is set up. But that gives me up to the ability again to do multiple devices. I can connect, I can disconnect here. Right now I'm not in quick switch mode, but we do have a quick switch mode that you can turn on where I can just instantly swap between devices. But now you can see I can go into my iPad. In this case, I can select the ScreenBeam. And we also have the ability to do a QR code where you can just snap the QR code and it allows you to connect. But now I've got my, the code comes up on the screen and I can see it's 1817. And now I'm doing the same principle that I was talking about earlier, but I'm doing this with the iPad. So now I have the iPad content sharing. Again, I can do the things that I talked about earlier, being able to show, show a slideshow, and I can open up. And now I'm doing, again, this is an example of extended screen. Now, iPad only does this when you're in PowerPoint, but the fact that I have the ability to write on my screen, I can't open up the right one. I can't see my tools. Oh well. But the ability, again, to be able to use that content how I expect to be able to use it is really powerful and really important. And now it gives me some functionality that I may not have had. Oh, that's why, because I'm not in presenter view. That I may not have had previously, but I've given my teachers the freedom again to be able to utilize their devices how they want to be able to do them. And it all starts, again, with that simplicity of putting a screen in there, whether it's a projector or whether it's a flat screen, it doesn't really matter. And you put that ScreenBeam on it. And this is all it is right here. It's just this device, or this, in this case, the 1100 plus that I talked about earlier. But when I get into it, it offers you so much more. That's why when I talk about ScreenBeam, I talk about enhanced wireless display. Not only can we do the things that we've shown here, I talked to you about digital signage. It becomes a digital signage player, so that if your teachers, when they walk into the room and they turn their screen on, it can be its own player that can play content. Maybe it's a calendar of the day. Maybe it's some content that the school needs to know at the end of the day, so the principal wants to push out content. And our partnership with Carousel Digital Signage allows you to really have some really cool content that you don't have to create from scratch, and allows you to push that out to all the screens that you need to be able to do. And CMS also allows you to manage those situations where if there's some displays you want showing digital signage, other displays you not, there's ways to be able to manage that through CMS and have that set up. But that is a really simple, and you can see I've got multiple devices here. I've got another Windows device, I've got a Mac OS device, I've got a Chromebook sitting in the back here that I could connect. I don't know if we have a lot of time to do that. I'm trying to look at my clock here. But that gives you a really good, quick, real-time view, and it really is that simple. And again, there's no apps you're installing, there's no dongles, there's no other thing that you need to train your teachers on to make this work. But it is a secure solution as well. And again, if you're interested in talking about that more, that's probably a time for an individual conversation that we sit down and talk about all the security functions that we have built into ScreenBeam. In fact, we just ran out to one of our schools last week. They were concerned because something was showing up on their displays, but it wasn't us, right? It was because we have a secure solution. We have multiple redundancies built in place to protect the content, to protect the resources that you have and the time that you put into it. It was something to do with their display that they hadn't turned on or turned off. So we really have thought of almost everything when it comes to these solutions and making sure you have the right environment to teach in. And so I go back to that idea of all those challenges that your schools are facing. When you look at all those challenges again, and when you recognize, look, I need to have something that's simple, that's scalable. We have devices that school districts have been using for 10 years, almost 10 years in their classrooms, and they're still using them today, and we still support them. If that's not scalable, I mean, we're talking at that deployment, like 3,000 or 4,000 devices that they're still using today that are still functional and they still use on a regular basis. That's a scalable solution, right? It's something that you can then know that you're going to use in the future, right? So it's not, if we go away from the hybrid model, as most schools, a lot of schools are doing, ScreenBeam is still something that you can use on a regular basis. You're not buying purpose-built equipment that you can only use in a hybrid environment. You're actually buying something that can be integrated into those hybrid environments, but it allows you to have something that's useful on the long term. When you talk about teacher retention and creating the right environments for your teachers and something that's accessible for all your teachers and your students, this helps you to increase that because of some of our UC capabilities. It helps that idea of access, even for hybrid environments, but it helps the teacher be able to share this content with any student in the classroom and even remote students. And again, we can talk more about that if we have time, but that is where we are with this technology and making sure that we're providing this. That's something that's really simple and allows you to have a flexible solution in your classrooms that you know that also is not going to overly complex. We go to that very first bullet point, is that complex IT environment where we have overly simple, overly complex IT solutions that are coming in, multiple devices on your network. How do I simplify the management of those things? And again, ScreenBeam ticks that check mark off by providing CMS Enterprise for no additional cost, as it comes with the ScreenBeam 1000 and the 1100 Plus. And so we check off all those boxes, but also, again, we simplify the possibility of starting out fresh with a right environment for your teachers and your students by providing them a simple but powerful solution that you saw me demonstrate here really quickly and really easily. I'm going to jump back to my screen. Let me see if I can open up my slide deck again, because there's a couple other slides that I wanted to show. And let's see if I can navigate back there. Okay, so you should be seeing my PowerPoint again. I'm going to go and ScreenBeam brands that trust us. This is kind of a pride slide. You know, we do have brands that trust us all over the world, both enterprise and education. And then if I get specifically into the K through 12 and higher ed, you can see we're working with districts all over the country, large and small, and making sure that this solution is working for them in different areas and different environments, whether it be the classroom, whether it be huddle spaces, meeting spaces, conference rooms, anywhere you have a screen, this is where ScreenBeam can be effective. I talked about multi-view mode, but this is an example of what that looks like with ScreenBeam and multiple operating systems. I also talked about ghost inking, which you saw an example of that, so I'm not going to necessarily show this video, but you can see side by side if you watch this later on. Well, I guess it's going to play. You can see side by side the maybe it's not going to play. The difference between with ghost inking turned on and ghost inking turned off. And here, well, and the next slide is something I didn't want to get into without offering some questions. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up to any questions we might have. I really appreciate your time today, those of you who have joined us on the call. Any questions that we can answer? I think you can put them in the chat. I don't know if microphones can be turned on or not. I'm happy to do that.
Certainly.
If anybody wants to, but
actually, we do have one question that came from Duke Yoon, but he had to jump. One of his questions was, is this presentation being recorded, and absolutely it is being recorded, and we will be posting it onto the ScreenBeam YouTube channel, so you can find it there. We'll probably be following up with everyone to let them know where exactly to find it with a nice link. The other question he had naturally is, are you able to do on-site demos to help make sure ScreenBeam would work with our existing classroom tech, like multiple monitors, etc.?
Absolutely, absolutely. We are able to do that. I know that that's one of the great things about working with Howard, is that they have a great team of classroom of design engineers that are all over the place. We are happy to work with them. They've all got all the ones that I worked with. They've all got ScreenBeams with them. At least they should, unless they left them somewhere. But but they all have ScreenBeams. They have the 1100 plus, and they can get the 1000. They have a couple of those, but they can meet you on site. If it requires us to come on site, we certainly can make that happen. But we are available to be able to do that, absolutely. And just let us know, and we'll be able to arrange that with your Howard representative and make that happen.
Great. Why don't I open it up to everybody? If anybody, I'm going to unmute all the attendees. So if anyone has a question, you should be unmuted now. Let's see, unless you are self-muted for all the attendees, or you can add a question into the question tab. I know that we have one question that just came through about how does ScreenBeam fit into the hybrid classroom model? Obviously, that hybrid classroom or even HyFlex is a big trending word that's being thrown out there. So maybe that's something you can talk about, David, as well.
Yes. So that was that last slide that I have, but again, I didn't want to overshare. Let me see if I can get back in here. So that is where we are coming up with an announcement very soon. Keep clicking back. There we go. An announcement really soon regarding this. Oh, come on. This is called ScreenBeam Conference, and it does allow you to use, and now this would be involving the 1100 plus, so not necessarily something that we put in every classroom, but we do see some school districts going with the 1100 plus model, especially in higher ed. In fact, this is the only model that we would put in higher ed. The 1000 is really exclusively for K through 12. But we are launching something called ScreenBeam Conference, which allows you to integrate the ScreenBeam into a hybrid environment or a HyFlex environment if you're talking in K through 12 or in higher ed, where you can bring your own meeting, right? Essentially, it allows you to connect the ScreenBeam to your screen, but also connect it to the camera and the speaker in the room. So if you have an all-in-one, a lot of those meeting rooms have a Poly device or a Logitech camera that has camera, microphone, and speakers. It's just a really simple USB cord. You plug that into the back of the ScreenBeam, but the difference, the uniqueness of this is that anybody can walk into that room and connect to ScreenBeam Conference and immediately get wireless access to the camera and the mouse, in a camera and the speaker and the mics in the room, which is really unique because it's giving them a wireless solution that is completely contactless. So a teacher doing this in a HyFlex or a hybrid classroom, you don't have to jump through a lot of hoops to set all this up. You literally add one of those cameras to a screen and you put a ScreenBeam with it, and anybody can start their meeting and connect to ScreenBeam Conference, start their meeting and select ScreenBeam Conference or select the in-room devices as their camera and as their microphones, and it becomes that HyFlex environment almost instantly. But what's unique about this is because at our heart, we are still driving this idea of wireless display, a contactless environment. Anybody who comes into that room, and maybe they haven't joined that meeting remotely, right? They haven't joined on their device. They can still share their screen using ScreenBeam wirelessly, right? And it shows up in that meeting, right? So to the remote participants. So again, there's no switching between devices. There's no having multiple people in the room join the meeting. It allows you to just share your content like you would as if it was just an in-room meeting, and everybody, even remote, sees that as well because it's all being driven through the ScreenBeam. That's really unique. And then the other cool thing about this is the ScreenBeam itself is still, again, we talk about something that's long-term and scalable. As we start to get away, or as you have more people back in the office and you're having less remote meetings, the ScreenBeam is still 100% functional as a full wireless display solution in the room. So again, all that being able to walk in and have to worry about dongles, cables, those HDMI ring adapters where you don't have to be trying to dig through which one's the right one on the keychain. Those are no longer necessary for guests and for employees because of some of the unique features of the 1100 Plus. So that's a really small snapshot of that, but that's something that we're launching very soon here. We got people super excited about it, especially in the higher ed space. People are really excited about being able to have something that's a bring your own meeting solution that you can use with Zoom, with Teams, with GoToMeeting, with WebEx, and not have to worry about having to have multiple people come in and try to plug in their devices, or they can't run the meeting from their own device. They have to go in and use the in-room computer that everybody else has just used. And again, in our COVID world that we live in, the post-COVID world, that's something that people are more concerned about. So we want to provide a solution that's safe and easy to use.
David, we do have, I think we have maybe time for one more question.
Okay.
The next question that came through was, how does audio work with ScreenBeam?
Sure. With audio, so I'll go with a couple of different ways, but with Windows, because your HDMI, essentially it's mimicking an HDMI connection. So with Windows and Miracast, which again, I didn't get a chance to go into the technical details, but don't be fooled by a screen or by another device that says, oh yeah, we do Miracast, it's just the same as everybody else. All Miracast is not created equal, and ScreenBeam does it better and on a different level than almost 90% or more of everybody else out there, especially those screens that you can just buy that says, oh yeah, we have app-free wireless display. It is not the same, and don't be fooled by that. And contact us more if you want to know about that. But what happens in the case of Windows is that it passes all the audio and video via HDMI or via wireless in Miracast to the ScreenBeam, which passes that along to the screen. So if you have speakers on your screen or your projector, it's going to play automatically through there. All the audio, 5.1 audio up to 4K video with Windows, and it will pass that through. We also have an audio out on both the 1000 and on the 1100 Plus that you can do duplex and split that audio out to another set of speakers. So everything comes to the ScreenBeam, and the ScreenBeam passes it along to the display or to external speakers. Now that's the same with Mac OS and iOS as well, that it will play that audio through there. So it carries all of that signal through wireless display to the ScreenBeam, and then it can get distributed either to the screen itself or the projector, or if there's a separate set of speakers. Or someone has also wanted to know about Bluetooth. Can you use Bluetooth while you're using wireless display? Absolutely. On Windows 10, I've used it all the time. I can split the audio from my device to a Bluetooth speaker while I'm sharing mirrored content on the screen. So there's a bunch of different ways that can work.
All right. Let's see. Do you think we have maybe one more? Let's see. We do have one more question, David, coming through. Let me expand that. Let's see. I would like to follow up with you, David, on. Oh, never mind. They just want to follow up with you on about getting a demo unit. So we always like that kind of question.
Awesome.
That's it from the question tab. So I think it is 11:54 according to my Apple Watch. And is there anything else, both of you guys? I think this has been wonderful. Anything else that you would want to add before we close out?
No, my contact information is there, and Shanna put hers in the chat, I believe. You can contact me and we can work together to kind of get this started. Obviously, I think you probably got an invite from this from your Howard representative or someone at Howard. Contact your Howard representative. They can reach out to us and we can make sure that we get you on track, especially if you're looking for a demo right now. If you want to get started, now's the time. I got muted there, sorry. Shanna, do you have anything else? I think Shanna's on mute.
Okay, I think, can you hear me okay now?
There you go.
Great. Great. Well, I just wanted to thank you, David and Allison, for hosting this webinar for us today. It's been a pleasure to learn more about ScreenBeam and the amazing solutions that you guys can provide to our classrooms. And we thank everyone who joined us today and sharing part of your day with us. Again, my name is Shanna Neely. My email is sneely@howard.com. We'd love to set up a meeting specifically for you to discuss your unique needs. And so please reach out to me or any of your Howard team members to do that. And thanks again for joining.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Have a great day. Bye-bye. Thanks, Shanna. Thanks, Allison.